All right, good. We're live. So, sup Facebook, sup Instagram. Happy Sunday
Happy
for most
Sunday.
of y'all, except except us that are in California right now. They're having to deal with the monsoon season, so that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
So, but otherwise, hold on. You ended it on Instagram, then to suspect it if not continue. Of course, I would. Of course, it has some. Of course, something's up with the
Oh,
Instagram, but that's fine. But
maybe I'll.
anyway, I'll work on that in a
Okay.
bit. But to right now, I am with my dear friend Lesley, who is also a dog trainer in my area. And yeah, Lesley, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and
Okay.
what you do, what you specialize in?
Okay. So I started dog training in 2003. So I just hit my 20th year at a board and train in Petaluma, California, named Dairy Dell, called Dairy Dell. And they primarily focus on pet dog training. So I've done a lot of group classes and the one-on-one doing the board and train dogs, and then it started morphing into other types of group classes besides obedience training, going into scent detection work, sniffer dog classes, and and I've really developed my niche because I'm a retired elementary school teacher. My niche has really gone into working with uh, families that have children and dogs, helping them,
Mm-hmm.
try to get a little harmony because things can get very chaotic. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so that's where I am right now, and yeah,
Yeah, so that's awesome. I think that's really rare that come by because I think it's really important, especially when like people, whether they get a puppy or they rescue a dog and then they have kids. I think
yeah,
just the whole dynamic can be
yeah,
really tough to work with, especially
yeah,
when you're like a 9 to 5
yeah,
mom or dad that's just trying to put bread on the table. I think that's definitely just one thing to understand it and like just go from that perspective, because if you're a single person that don't have kids or don't
that's right.
even like
Yeah,
kids, then you're not, then it's not relatable for you, but you have to like
right.
put it in your own you have to put yourself I'm trying to
Yeah,
remember, I can't English right now, like
yeah.
put
It's
yourself in the other
yeah,
person's shoe.
and it's easier for if there's a single person and they have a dog. I've had people talk to me about, well, my dog doesn't like my nieces and nephews, and that's a much easier situation to deal with because they don't live together. um, and some dogs, either they didn't grow up with kids, they're not comfortable with kids. There's a lot of things I'll talk about, the things that kids do that make dogs sort of perceive them differently, which a lot of adults don't even realize. um, but the other thing can be that somebody has had a dog for a while and maybe they've treated it like they wanted to get children eventually, so they kind of babied the dog, and then they
Hmm.
bring in a baby or they bring in kids into the mix, and that's another scenario that things can go awry. So it's there's all kinds of different things that come to me, and I'm always real happy to help.
Yeah, so like for you, like what motivated you to go to schools and educate
Yeah, yeah.
parents and kids? Like
So
what was the big thing for you?
when I started meeting with people, I would hear them talk about things that would happen, and that the children got bitten,
Hmm.
and they were very simple things that if they would have just had understood to educate the kids, because kids generally will try to listen and work with you, but they don't know things automatically, and sometimes the parent doesn't know. So I developed something that was a hands-on. As a teacher, children learn best by using something that is hands-on, besides people just talking to them. And that's when I came up with the Stop, Look, and Pause set, that
Hmm.
help with zeroed it into like the key either situations that happen at home, dogs are sleeping or eating or chewing on a bone, to body language. And when I began looking into sort of learning more about this, this whole like dogs biting kids, I realized I learned that there are 4.7 million dog bites every year in the United States. And that is a low estimate because many people don't report the bites. So we'll go on 4.7 million dog bites. 51%, more than half, are all of those bites are to children.
Mm-hmm.
And of those children, there's an age group from 5 to 9 that get the majority of the bites. So my goal was get something that's hands-on, and but also start to really educate and work. And it was great because even though I was certified kindergarten through 8th, all my years I really focused on 2nd grade down to kindergarten. So I was really dialed in to how these kids think. So that is, that was sort of my focus. Then I also learned to help people. 77% of the bites that happen are from dogs that the children are familiar with, but not their own necessarily, and not some stray dog. Everybody thinks it might be some stray dog. So it's usually like they go to a friend's house, they go to a relative's house, grandparents, whatever, and that's the dog that bites them most of the time. So, helping kids understand and parents understand that is uniquely different as their child is from even their own brothers and sisters, which is the first thing I have to do when I talk to people is get to learn, tell me about your child. Tell me what's going on. Because it's not an easy fix when you're going in to help these individual families. So first I have to ask a lot of questions, learn about the children and what's going on. And also then I have to also ask, tell me about your dog. Tell me what their behavior is. Maybe they're really lacking what they're giving to the dog, and the dog is frustrated. The dog is fearful. So we have to really approach it in different ways. And then I have to learn, well, what's your personality like? What do you like? What's your husband like? Or your wife like? And once I get all that information, this is all before I meet with anybody. Then I can set up something where I usually tell people, I usually find that there's all kinds of things that adults haven't addressed.
Yep.
And so I tell them before I meet with you and your children, or have a session just with the children. The parents are always there, but I focus on the kids. Before that ever happens, you and I have to meet, and we have to fix the pulling and the pulling on leash and the jumping and the other behavioral things that they never addressed, and get their communication with their dog and help them learn what's their part to play. Dogs might not see them as a leader. So why should I listen to, you're not a leader, and now I'm not going to listen to these kids either, because they're definitely not leaders. So there's just chaos to try to sort out. But you know what? It works, and you can help people, and it's not as hard. It's not really that difficult.
I think for most of us, like all the dog trainers, right, we're very used to like talking to adults, or we're used to working with people like past 15 years old, and we're all used to, like, as everyone can get it, right, but you can't really explain it to a kid that way.
No.
And I feel like there's like the ages you were talking about there, the more difficult per se, just because like you have to like put it into really simpler terms for them. And I mean also too, there you also have to consider like, every kid's different, and so like, you might have one kid that's a lot more willing to listen and things like that, or more sensitive, but then you might have the kid that's just throwing things everywhere, and the parent tells them to stop, and then the kid's like,
Yep.
no, I'm not
Yep.
gonna do it. And
Yep.
there's just so many different
Yeah.
angles
There
you
is.
have to approach it.
Yes, totally. And I really want the parents of the family to really sort of be the dog's advocate too. They're trying to be the children's advocate, but also be the dog's advocate, because they are just missing all of these clues. And one of the things that I wanted to mention too is they've done studies to find out why do so many bites happen to kids, and the number one reason is they don't know how to read dog body language.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that a lot of adults don't know how to read dog body language. They completely confuse things that they're saying. The dog
Mm-hmm.
may be in sort of a listening mode. Their ears are just aerodynamically back, and the parents think, oh, they're afraid. I'm like, no, that dog's not afraid. Look at its whole body, So you have to kind of work them through things. The children might see a dog that's fearful and actually be able to say the dog is afraid, but they don't know what to do when the dog's afraid. So they think, how do I help a friend? I help a friend by hugging them.
Mm-hmm.
And we all know as trainers, that is not going to help that dog. And the child might get bit. And parents think, isn't that sweet? Isn't that great? The child wants to go over, they wants to get hit. All of a sudden the dog bit it, bad dog.
Mm-hmm.
It's like,
Yeah.
no, you
It's,
help. You have to educate them on all of those things.
yeah.
Well.
I think especially, right, like it's so easy to go on Instagram or Facebook, and then you see videos of the kids hugging the dog, and then you see the dog with the whale eyes, ears back, and closed mouth, and like some dog trainer look at it, it's like, oh no, I'm like, it's what's gonna happen right in a few
Yep.
seconds, or some person will just post a video of my dog biting the kid, and you're like, oh my god, why did you let it go that far, so
because they don't know, they're ignorant. There's not enough, it's all about education, but it's also about not making people feel bad. So I always make people feel like the best thing that they did is they came in to see me, and I praise them. I mean, positive reinforcement works great for animals, but it works really good for humans too. So there's the reluctant dad that didn't want to come in, and once he comes in and I'm complimenting him on a lot of what he's doing, you got to get everybody. I talk about teamwork. You have to get people working together, but you try to start catching all the positive things they're doing, and don't make them feel ashamed for making mistakes, because they're not going to learn anything. They don't want to come back to you. So that's a really important part too. And just talking to them normal. I've seen too many dog trainers that are like, why did you do that? What were you thinking? I'm like, oh my God. I don't want anybody to talk to me like that if I don't know any better.
Yeah, I mean, putting in the perspective too, like when with the economy going down, and like parents just trying to make sure they get money to put bread on the table, keep a roof on their heads. Like, of course, like if you're a parent, you're putting your kid as like priority number one before the dog. And I think it's just like they just don't know better, or they're used to maybe like their past dog being okay with the kid, and then they're thinking this is the same dog. But I think people also have to consider sometimes breed, sometimes genetics, right? Because like if like I'm less worried about a lab or a golden. Maybe I'm worried that they're gonna like bump into them or make them fall or things like that and get too excited. But versus like, I don't know, like a sheepdog or like something like a dog that doesn't want their personal space invaded, and then you have a kid, I think that's always something to consider. And I think
Oh, you froze. I don't know if I'm frozen, but the weather probably created havoc. I don't know. Am I still alive? You froze, Kevin. I'm not sure if we're coming back. I'm not sure if I'm still talking, but I'm just going to talk about breeds for a minute. And you can't always 100% be guaranteed that a breed that you get is going to be the perfect family dog. You can stack the deck in your favor. Oh, there we go. Was I frozen?
Sorry. No, there's a stupid thing when the wind blows
Yeah, I
the
fixed.
house too hard, the
Yeah,
internet
yeah.
suddenly blacks out. So I put myself on a hotspot on my phone.
Okay,
So
okay.
my apologies for spacing out just now. So
I kept talking a little bit because I wasn't sure if I was live or not. But what I was saying, was I live? So I don't want
you're
to
good.
repeat.
You're good. You're good. You can keep you. It was just more my connection than yours, so you're good.
Okay, good. So I was basically telling people to, you can try to stack the deck in your favor, saying, well, this is supposed to be a good breed for kids, but that isn't always the case either. I mean, so a lot of it is when people are going to look for a dog, and they say, well, I want a brown chocolate lab because I know labs are good and I had a chocolate lab before or something like that. And they'll go and get one. And that dog was great with kids and they'll go and get it. And then this one doesn't like kids. And it was visible in the very beginning. So one thing I try to coach people on is if you're going to go and get a dog, whether it's a puppy or a full grown dog, and you're going to be bringing it in, if you can have time to take the kids, and it could be one-on-one, you don't want to overwhelm the dog and make things worse for it just because it was too much at once. But see how the dog reacts to the children before you bring them home. Is that dog like, I'm all about the kids. All I want to do is be with these kids. And I'm not afraid. And somebody dropped something over here and somebody ran and did something. And this is great. I don't care. It doesn't matter about the behaviors because we can work with, behavior modification like jumping and all those kind of wild behaviors. You can work with those things. A trainer can help you with those things. But if your dog doesn't seem to really like the kids from the get-go, it is really, it's really hard to get them to really, really like the kids. It's a lot of work. It may work. It may not work.
Yeah, I think I mean, those are things that's like, I think is very difficult for some people where it's like in a perfect world, they just want it where, hey, like I want my dog to get along with the kids, and then you have to be the one that maybe later on, or if like you kind of see it doesn't work, you have to be like, yeah, I don't think this is a good match, and we're just trying to speak for the best well-being for like the dog and for them, because if it one way or another, there might be an incident happening if the dog is not compatible and things like that, and it's so easy for like a parent to just be busy cooking or doing laundry, and then all of a sudden we hear a loud sound and the kid crying. We're like, what happened? And then all this all these dramatic things that we dog trainers have to listen to. And also for anyone that's watching, if you got any questions or things like that, or if you're watching, leave a comment, say hi, or leave a question for us to answer, and we can probably just go over them like later on. But one of the things I wanted to bring up, because I really love this from Lesley, is Lesley made this book about dog and child safety that I really like. So Lesley, since you're the one that had this great idea, why don't you explain and like what the book is, and as to like how you educate people, and I can open it up for people to see too. So,
well, when I started working with families, and I started to realize, these kids really needed something that was hands-on, I had the idea of putting a sticker learning activity together. And it's something that it has a two-sided activity board, and it's a very simple concept. It will say safe to pet and not safe to pet. And then children get the stickers are reusable, so you could play it many times over, peel them back off, put them back on the sheet, play it with another child that comes to your house. And the stickers there's 12 of them, because I found that if you have too many things, it's too overwhelming. So I tried to boil it down to 12 of the very common things that either they're everyday things that dogs do in your home, like, eating and sleeping and things like that, as well as body language that may tell a child, my body language saying I'm approachable. So just empowering children to start thinking on their own a little bit. And what happens generally is this is something that I specifically made for a parent or an adult to play with the children. This is not for a kid to have and just play with the stickers, because there needs to be a two-way talk. You ask the child to make a decision and pick a sticker and place it, and then you get to ask them, why did you make that decision? What were you thinking? And not like, what were you thinking? Just like, tell me what you were thinking. And then they get to say what they're thinking, and you'll find out they will say some really weird things. They will, then you're like, wow, you'd never know that they would be in their head. And on the other thing that I included, because the adults don't always know what they're looking at either, is there are pictures of each one of the stickers and a descriptor of why you should or shouldn't go over and pet the dog. I think it's a little close. There you go. So it talks about what you're looking at with the body language, and, giving that dog some space, and why it's not a good idea to pet them. So one of the reasons I made this was because, dog trainers were kind of, for some people, we're expensive to come and have an hour session for a family. And I wanted something that, an average person could buy for $15, or I think on my website, it's like, $12, and have something that they can say, well, I can't afford a dog trainer, but I can at least start buying something to help my family. And so that is the reason that I also wanted to have something like this, because I actually don't use that in my sessions. Now I just sell it. And then, of course, they are donated by our local animal shelter to all of the kindergartens. And then I go in and teach the kindergartners in a big, large group activity. But every one of those kindergartners gets a free one of these in our town, our city, which is awesome. And they get to take it home and use this with their parent. So I feel super good about that, because I'd never be able to do that without the support of the North Bay Animal Services. So it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I think just being able to promote it like that, and I think just getting like good information out there, because there's just so much things available. It's just hard for someone to just pick one because there's so many options. But to have a book like that, super simple, and to have the reusable stickers and just review it every time, I think it's really good, because I feel like, there's some kids that read cues better than others, but I think just having it where like someone like dog trainers, I feel like we all have different niches, but I don't think we have enough niches where it's like you're with your niche, right, Leslie, is just getting the kid, just helping understand the kids and then the dog, and then putting it all together, and then just like one example was, I had a client that I sent you like way back maybe like a year or two ago, with this couple with 2 kids and a rescue dog.
Sure.
And whenever the dog was around the mom, and one of the youngest, it wasn't the oldest, it was the youngest kid, that whenever he walked in, he would charge him and things like that. And so like for me, I talked about different things, but then like she said it was, she couldn't be on top of it and all that, or like it just wasn't working. So then I was like, okay, let me refer you to Leslie, which I don't know if you do remember the dog I'm talking about. I think her It was like a black. It was like a black. It was like a black dog. It was like a mutt. Um,
I
like
probably
two.
would if I heard the name. I mean, and there's been very few circumstances where after I can sit and
I
observe
think his
all
name
of
is. I think his name was Otis or something like that. Or
Otis. It does sound familiar. Um, at this point, after 20 years, I've worked with like it's a couple thousand now.
yeah,
Anytime
yeah.
you're like a 20-year trainer, you got so many. But I do when I see people and you see the dog and everything, you remember everything. But they're. I can tell you that when people come in, it's fairly easy for me to analyze the
Mhm.
situations now from all the different, if it's an aggressive situation, because like over that much time, you kind of get really good at all these different areas, resource guarding and general aggression and leash reactivity and all that. You can have it all, but I have very few times I have had to say, and if you can't be on top of this, your dog, either the dog just really doesn't like the kids and it's going to be very hard for them to try to get the dog into liking the kids. And the parent can't watch all the time. And I think it's not wise to have even dogs with cats, zones set up all over your house. It's just no way to really live,
Mhm.
unless your goal is to try to start getting everybody together. So
Right.
very few times I've had to say, is there anybody that's in your family that really loves, we'll say Otis, and would be willing to have Otis come and live with them?
Mhm.
Because you kind of want to make it so once a dog starts having a bite history, it gets really difficult, especially a big adult and grown up dog, to place them. So if you can avoid a situation that you think is going to happen, but when I tell people, this is going to be a lot of work. Can
Mhm.
you do it?
Yeah.
And if you can't supervise, if you can't supervise what's happening, is there a safe place? And if they say, listen, and I empathize with people and say, you're a really busy mom. You have a couple kids. Your spouse can help or not help, and they have to have that hard. They have to really think about it sometimes. Very few times that has happened, but you can kind of start to see it as a trainer. You can see it early on,
Mhm.
and I gently say, this is something that may happen, so think about this, and then very quickly I'll get into it. I won't make people linger before I really say, this is probably going to happen.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Because I mean, it's like, just tough, especially with like, the like that one case. Like, I wasn't sure because like tried diff I tried different things between like maybe a little bit of a correction with the dog or like a little bit of a timeout or like just working on having them practice the setup and things like that. But
Mhm.
it always like for me, I'm just used to just like I do work with a lot of families, but there's sometimes where that's why I like having like a whole network of trainers so I can
Yeah.
refer because you might know something I might not know per se, especially
Right.
for one of those situations. But it just being able to have it where you can have a you can find someone with that niche that can
Right.
um help them along
Right.
because like and then even if it was like you didn't didn't help them with the thing, but you help them get to the road where
Right.
they can resolve that issue or help
Yeah.
handle that issue a
and
lot
and to
better.
feel
So
okay about it. It's very emotional for people, especially if they've had a dog for they've already had a dog for a couple of years. Sometimes I have had situations where the dog is being possessive of the mom. Usually it's the mom,
mhm,
and a lot of times it's that the mom, people think that taking care of the dog, just doing the food and they walk them, that puts them in sort of a leadership position. But they're just I explain that you're being a really great resource provider with affection and all of that. But it doesn't translate to being a good leader. There was no real structure and guidance and things like that. And sometimes, once we started setting up some like, well, what kind of privileges do your dog have? Always couch, sleeps in our bed. He tells us what he wants us to do, and we do it. So you got all that stuff that's been going on. And once you say, hey, are you willing to start changing some of those things? Because we can start shifting the relationship, which will put you into a better position to start then working. And then we got to also work with the kids. Leave the dogs alone for this. Here are some games that you can play because they want to be friends with their dog. So you can't just tell kids, no. You can't do this. You can't do that. So you have to you have to address these things separately. They're usually, these are, I can't give simple one word, one sentence answers to people to solve this issue. So you can see that it's complicated. But the good news is, I would say, more than 90% of the time, very, very successful. And that's based on follow-up. How are things going? What's going on? Oh my God, everything's turned around. It's great. It's wonderful. Things are, that type of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're just, dogs are simple most of the time. People are just more definitely
Absolutely.
more complicated, and we're like, we have to be paid for either like we're couple therapy or we're Dr. Phil, and then we have to add, child guidance counselor along with the job sometimes, and
Yes.
sometimes I have to talk to the kids in a certain way. I'm like, hey, do you not want to be on? It's like, bleh. Okay, hold on, let me fix my words. I'll be like, hey, it's like, hey child, do you want to be in timeout? It's like, no. Then you sit here quietly, and if you're good, I'll give you a cookie, right? So I literally had to do that one time where it's like, hey, if you stop messing with the dog, stop yelling, I'll bring you a cookie next time I come here. And I'm like, and she's like, what flavor? I'm like, what do you like? Peanut butter. I'll bring you peanut butter cookie if you don't mess with the dog. And then last time when I saw after a few weeks, I came back to him and I was like, did you bother the dog? No. It's like, does mom say the same thing? And she said yes. Okay, good job. I'll get the cookie from my car. And then like just being able to reward good behavior, acknowledge it, I think is really good, because because you and I both know how it is. If everyone just says no to the dog, it won't work with the kid, because dogs.
Well, it doesn't work with the dog either. They need to see some positives, and but if you can get the kids, figure out ways. Zero in it. I usually try to have, like I said, start with meetings privately and I tell the parents, I don't want you to bring the
kids. Guys, it's just the wind. Hey.
Somebody else there. Oh, it's the wind.
It's the wind. They're not. It's knocking on the glass.
Yeah, that's funny. I know, it's pretty crazy.
But you were saying.
Oh, I was saying, I start. When the parents come in, I have to start with them and say, this is your part that you're going to play. These are the things that you're going to change for yourself. Then we're going to have a session, and I'm just going to talk to your child. You're going to sit here and listen and support me, but we're going to talk. I'm going to talk to your kids. And I usually like to start off by saying, what do you love about your dog? And I let them talk and get them relaxed. A lot of times they're nervous because they always have to come. I'm not going to their house. They're always coming to Dairy Dell in a conference room, which is great because I have a controlled environment versus they get up and walk out of the room at the house. It's like, I don't want that. So I start with that. And then I already know the answers to this because I've talked to the parents. Then I'll ask the parent or they ask the child, what is it that you don't like? And it's usually nipping, jumping, something like that. and we actually do some of the behaviors. We get children doing behaviors to get the dog to engage. And so we get kids, if the kids are running, I have them run.
Mm-hmm.
But I give them the power to understand, well, this is what you're going to do. This is your
Mm-hmm.
role to play. And then it's so gratifying, because if they do what I have instructed them to do, the dog goes right along and does exactly what we want him to do. And everybody is like, wow, how did that happen? That is like magic.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really cool. So there's not really for kids. We're not having children. The parents get to have, they might give some consequences of penny can shake to interrupt something,
Mm-hmm.
verbal, and then follow up on something else. But for children, we don't want children being confrontational.
No,
No,
that usually leads to that does not usually end well, especially
no,
like, I like especially for like a kid, like young, like super young, like that would not be ideal because we don't want
no.
the dog to see the kid as a threat or something, or
Right,
lead to more conflict.
right, right. So once I can show them, what they can do to sort of control situations that are very common in the house. Because to tell kids don't run, that's not realistic.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to get situations happening that happen in the house, and then we can show them, this is what you can do instead. Once we've done that, then I can start changing the dialogue a little bit and say, okay, let's figure out what you can do, because a lot of times the nipping and the is all because kids really want to play with their dogs, so they're playing the way they think that is okay to play. Maybe that they play with their brothers or sisters. They're handsy, they're touchy and
Mm-hmm.
handsy. And we all know as trainers, all this stimulates dogs. So the dogs are biting and nipping, and then all of a sudden the kids are unhappy. So we sort of, like to talk about, your hands are like a dog's mouth. And so when you're doing this with your hands, your dog thinks, well, I'm going to do what I would do with a dog. So they view the child as a dog
Mm-hmm.
and do what they know because they're dogs. And so once you kind of let them know that, then we say, okay, you want to play with your dog. So let's find some games to play. That way the dog and the child, they're starting to bond. They're actually doing things together, but the child isn't focused right on touching the dog or doing things like, hands on with the dog. They're playing some type of a game. And
Yep.
that really helps the scenario, of their dynamics and bonding increase. Um,
Yeah, and I definitely would love to hear what games you do with the kids and the dogs,
yeah,
so then like people
sure.
can, especially people right now listening, they
Yeah,
have some ideas that they can go and like potentially practice or just do with
absolutely.
them and just build more bond, because I think that's definitely a thing that's good because games are fun for the kids. Like
Yeah,
I there's like times where, I'll say, like if we're working on chasing or like getting the dog too excited or something, I'll tell the kids, we're gonna play Simon
yeah,
says run, and if the
yeah,
dog chases it, I say Simon says tuck your hands and slow down, or Simon
yeah,
says
nice. Yeah,
tell the dog sit, and then they do it. Good job, right? So it's little
yep,
things like that makes the kids be like, oh, this is fun. I want to keep doing this, instead of
right.
like, okay, when the dog does this, you do this now. You
Yeah,
shifting the it's how
sure.
you say it is matter. But yeah, I definitely would want to hear what you said,
Yeah.
what games you teach.
Exactly. Well, I find out if there's any games that they've already started to try and see if we can add to that. If they haven't or they haven't been successful, I think one of the one of my go-tos would be fetch. And a lot of people don't, they think fetch means it has to be a ball and it has to be outside. And it's not always, then they may run into issues. The dog runs after the ball and picks up the ball and then drops the ball or doesn't bring the ball back. There's too many distractions outside if you're trying to teach something like that to a dog. So we introduce fetch, and it could be a couple of toys, and we play it indoors. And we talk about that you don't have to throw it very far at first. And we talk about if the dog gets it, like, yeah, good job. And it's kind of like I said, everybody likes a cheerleader, and the dogs, sometimes it can get overboard and the dog just drops it. It's like, what? But, you want to make the dog actually feel good about what it's doing too. And then the dog hopefully comes back, and they usually will at some point. Don't pull it away right away. That's a different game. Tug of war is a different game. Not necessarily one that I would do a go-to for. There's kind of parameters with that. But fetch would be a good one. And you're sort of introducing give it. You might be using, for kids, you might have some tiny pieces of kibble. And you trade. And when they drop it, we talk about give that toy back right away. But kids sometimes like to do this thing where they're playing keep away. And I've witnessed this going over to people's houses. There's a couple of siblings. They have a nice little cavalier, and they, the kids are playing keep away, never letting the dog get the toy. And so the dog just sort of wanders away and doesn't want to play. So sometimes you can bring up, let them play fetch, let them get it. Let them feel like a superstar for getting it. But don't do this keep away all the time, because how would you feel if you were playing with another kid that was older? So I do a lot of where I relate the scenario for kids to another kid, being teased and things like that. Another game that I like to play, which is the whole beginning level of the recall command. Well, you can do recall with the family, which is like puppy ping pong. So, you're having each one of the family members call the dog, or you can call it round robin. You can call it whatever cute little name you want. But everybody's learning, and everybody's working together, and the kids feel good. The dog comes to them. They give them a treat, tell them good dog. And, the parents are calling them. So that's a great activity to practice, because you're actually learning the body language that encourages the dog to want to come to you. What are things that you can do to help them? A lot of times people are still going old school. They're like, come, really forceful. I'm like, you sound a little bit more pleasant than that, So, we try to get the kids, because kids are going to mimic and copy everything you do. So you have to make sure, again, that these parents are modeling the behavior that you want, even for touching the dog. So many times the parents this is what they think you're supposed to touch a dog. And the dog is like mouthy as all get out.
Yeah.
So I have to tell them, go slow, relaxed, maybe try under here. You don't have to get all crazy. You don't even have to touch the dog as much as you think either.
Yep.
And then the kids learn.
Yeah, I think also too, like I've had like kids that keep reaching their hand over the dog's head, and then what I end up doing is I say, hey child, go sit on the ground for me real quick, and I put my hand over their head and I go, do you like when this happens? You're like, no. Then that's how your dog feels. Like you have to, like when I put them in the dog's perspective when they're looking from when I do it, then they start to understand. And even with recall, like I play hide and seek where I'll hold the dog and I'll have the kid show a little bit of food and go in the corner or behind a couch or something, and then we'll say call your dog, and then we have the dog. I let the dog go to find the owner, the kid, and then reward the dog and do that a couple of times. And
good.
Just making things fun like that, because one, if you make it too rigid, too boring, they're not gonna do it.
No.
But
you just hit on the other thing that we play in our little conference room is hide and seek, and the kids absolutely love that. But you're teaching, they feel like they're connected. The dog ends up listening to them. Now you may have to help guide the dog initially. So there's another part that a parent has to play. Might just a leash on a flat collar, just help guide the dog initially. And then the kids part is, of course, praise. I keep pushing, good dog, nice job, whatever. You don't have to say yes. It can be yes. It could be good dog, it could be whatever, but positive. And then some food reward. So that's great. That's perfect. Yeah. Scent detection, sniffer dog things, sometimes taking food underneath, like, those CeeLo cups, party cups. And doing some, like, the shell game. If the kids are old enough, I teach the sniffer dog classes, and I love it when kids can come, but they'd have to be more like, a mature 12 or up. But a 12-year-old could definitely do this. And once they learn it, it is really fun. Especially, this is such a great class to have under your belt as an adult, because of days that we're having like today, or across the country, like wicked cold weather, and people are just getting their dogs out for a pee and they come back in, and the dogs still need, to be active. And like today, we're not going to walk Mac. So I'm going to play some couple of rounds of hiding truffles, around the whole house, and he'll be exhausted and happy. But you can do these same games. You can learn them yourself, and then you can teach the kids. And that's another great activity.
Yeah. And I think also too, right? I think sometimes even just going for sometimes like a little walk with your kids, like outside with the dog, just having it where like because I feel like for the most part they have to deal with the kids like indoors 24/7 kind of thing. Right. And you know what, this brings there's one question that I was thinking of. So like, how often do you get it where the kids are running up ahead and then the dog is trying to get up ahead of, trying to follow with them, and then pulling the parent, like like, so, how often do you run into that, and like what do you usually suggest for those kind of
Well, that's a really hard one for the dog, because dogs are prey drive animals in general. And you could even have, again, I'll go back to the Cavalier, a little Cavalier. They're still canines, and canines just doesn't matter what the breed is sometimes. They still have these same drives. So, it's really hard to, unless you have really worked with your dog and your dog knows, hey, walk with me, walk on a loose leash. I'm asking you to choose to ignore the things that are happening around you. That would be what I would say. If you really want to work on that, you got to work on the one-on-one and then introduce some of that stuff. But trying to, just start pulling the dog back, and, you're doing this tug of war thing with your dog. I probably wouldn't even try to do any training or use training collars or anything if the kids are going to act like that. So unless, again, you got to either you get the kids to cooperate, or you take the other approach where the kids aren't going to cooperate and you're going to do a lot of work where you do one-on-one. So your dogs are like, I don't even care about them running up ahead. So it's a little bit of a complicated, how you can approach it scenario, but it's common.
Yeah, and that's totally understandable too, because even sometimes I'm just like, I don't know, and I just say, hey, like work on his leash skills outside of when you walk the kids, make sure it's solid, and then you introduce the kids little by little. But it's like, I feel like that's like one out of like 20 things that parents deal with the kids and things like that. So
I'd probably, what I'd probably do, I'd probably put on some like a harness, which actually sort of encourages, it seems, to pull. I mean, that's what my view. It's like, we call it a pull harness. My husband and I don't like. But I'd put something like that on. I'm like, you want to pull? You're going to pull? Go ahead, pull.
Hmm.
But then I'd say you want to get dressed now in your training collar, or whatever you're using that is more of a proper, I can give you feedback to let you know this is
Yep.
what we're doing now. That would be a separate thing. It's like a different outfit.
Yeah,
The
I think it's
harnesses,
a good idea.
yeah, and the harnesses, they kind of make dogs feel like they're more in charge. People are like, well, I thought that kept them from pulling. I'm like, no, that's why they use it for carts and sleds and things. It kind of holds their body, like you're holding on to them, but their mind isn't being controlled. You're just kind of holding the body.
Yep.
And uh, I say to people when they take my sniffer dog class, hey, have them wear a harness, because now they get to be in charge. This is their outfit. I said it's not a training collar type of situation, and they get their first lesson on the differences and why you would use what when.
Yeah, and especially too, like I tell people all that even when they don't have kids, it's like if you don't care if your dog's pulling at the time, or like if you're going on a hike and you don't care like if your dog's pulling, like switch to a harness that lets them know, okay,
Right.
cool, we're
Yeah.
this is leisure, this is you don't care. But if you
Yeah.
put on like your pinch collar, your sidekick leash, or your
Right.
whatever training collar you use, okay, that means we're walking, we're structured walk. And then being able to differentiate, I think, is really
That's right.
important. The
Yep.
context is really important. But yeah, like I'm trying to think what else. Like, and if you and you could keep going, and then I'm just trying to
Well,
think like what
one of the
other.
things I wanted to say, just so that people are aware, is that there are, oftentimes people want their child to be, they'll call because they say, I want my dog. This is my son's dog. I want my son to be in charge of this dog. So
Mm,
it's not really so I have to very skillfully coach them into the dog is going to want to be a pack member, a family member, and they don't view children, they view children differently. Dogs do. And sometimes that's a good thing. And sometimes, it explains certain behaviors. And there are 3 things that children do that helps to translate to a dog why they're a kid. And the 3
mm-hmm,
things are: kids are more unpredictable. They are, I mean, 1 minute they do one thing and 1 minute they do something else. And the dog's like, I don't like that. They
mm,
are also much more energetic and fidgety and, just generally moving around a lot. In the dog world, that doesn't translate to lead material. And the third thing is they are more emotional.
mm-hmm,
And the emotions, which also was brought up when I talked to adults, does not translate to lead material. And that's a lot of times you put those things together. That's normal for kids to be that way. Why it matters is that if the dog doesn't see the child as lead material, they're going to have a very difficult time telling the dog what to do, getting the dog to want to cooperate, especially if they're trying to be some kind of a boss. And the dog's like, don't think so. And then what happens? The kid gets mad,
mm-hmm.
which is more emotion.
Yep.
So I like to, I think the first blogs that I wrote and put it on my site is, do dogs perceive children differently than adults? And I talk about this. And I often share this with people because, it kind of gives them some good solid, they can, at the end of this blog that I did, I talk about if you are an adult and you are very emotional, whether you are a woman or a man, it is not going to help you achieve your goals. So you can dial it down and help yourself by trying to get your emotions in check. And sometimes it's, like I said, sometimes it's the lady in the family. And sometimes I've got a couple families that are coming in, and it happens to be the men that are very emotional and get very
Mhm.
angry. So, I'm helping one guy, he's totally making a turnaround. The other guy I haven't met yet. But it's really, I love it when I get to talk to these people and help them, and they actually see them like, wow. And I said, your blood pressure is going to come down too.
Yep. I think the important thing too is like I think we're very vocal creatures that we
Yeah.
like to
Yeah.
talk and like we think louder will let people or
Right.
other things will listen. So I think just being able to work because if you want a calm family setting, you have to be the first one to set the example and just
Absolutely.
be calm, be like assertive, but like set the rules, but calmly, right? Like if you're yelling, if you're frustrated, that's not gonna get you anywhere with the dogs and the kids.
Right.
And just starting with the main family members, and then it's like it's like a domino effect where like if you help one, you help the rest later on.
That's right.
Um, I think that's definitely important. It's just how we address, how we communicate, and like if I tell people the whole saying like treat others how you want to be treated. If you want your dog and your family to be calm, more likely you have to be the one to be calm first, and then they mirror that, right?
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
think that's the important thing.
Yep. I will often have maybe a mom come in, or a wife, and she's like, you know, I know what I'm supposed to do and I'm doing it, but nobody else in the family is doing it. And I'm really frustrated with them because you know, they're not doing it. I keep telling them, you have to do this, you have to do that. And I said, don't. You adults, you can't boss your spouse around. You're not going to be successful. It
Yep.
just creates conflict. So I
Yep.
said, just calm down, lead by example. When definitely it's easier with kids, but I said, lead by example, model, and then hopefully they start to see why it's working for you. And then just like you said, then it will start. But you have to help people take that pressure off of them to think they have. So nuts, they're like, nothing is going to work because these other members aren't doing it. I said, it might not work for them, but it'll work for you.
Hmm. I think it's also how I think it's also how they talk to the family members too. I
Oh
just
yeah,
talked to somebody. It's
totally.
like I just had a woman with her golden retriever like resource like it's a puppy but resource guards and things like that, and like he's been the daughter who's older with like 24 years older, and then like the other one is a husband, and then at first she kept complaining how they didn't listen and things like that, and how she's a teacher and she would talk to them like they're students, and I go, no, 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 no. You have to talk to it like it's a team thing. You have to talk
Right,
to it. You have to say it in a much calmer and nicer way, saying like, hey, if you don't want him to bite you, let's all agree to close the room door so he doesn't reach in for the socks. Or,
right,
if let's all agree if we're all going to be around, we are going to communicate if we're closing the door or not, or leave the
right.
leash on and things. And then he said, and then later in a week or two, she said, oh, it worked. And I go, cool.
Good.
Um, it's
Yeah.
just, it's just how you say words, because, there's a difference between, saying, it's like, I say, I think you should start doing this and this because it would help situate the whole family better versus, hey, you do what I say because I want you to
Right.
listen to what I say right now. It's too
Yeah.
different.
It's
It's
it's like
too,
exactly. It's more like, okay, so we see that this isn't working, and this is how they could say it. And it's like, so here's an idea. Why don't we try blank versus being dictatorial about things?
hmm I think it's just
Exactly right. Yeah.
delegating things like that because it's like, it like literally our dog training skills is not really. It's like we're learning how to train dog, but most of the time we're working on our people skills where we have to be like, okay, no, that's not how you literally couple therapy again. Like, okay, no, this is not how you talk to your husband. This is
Yeah.
like ask your husband to do this in a
That's right.
nicer way, and I
That's right.
guarantee he's gonna be a lot more willing, right?
Yeah.
Because
Totally. I
it's
do
just
think, I mean, our major goal as trainers is we really, we want to help the dogs. But,
yep.
I've always often felt And I'm lucky because I had so much experience working with parents when I used to teach, and delicately saying things or skillfully saying things, and then I can translate that. But you can have a really good dog trainer who is great at training dogs, but they don't have the interpersonal skills. And if you cannot reach and you cannot talk in a way that is motivating, convincing to the people that own the dog, you're not really going to reach your goals of helping the dog.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really important to say, what's the best way that I can help the people, because I really want to help the dog.
Yeah, because I think like how you said, you're like being empathetic, but also like I think just going to based on the mood, going like talking to them based on like the like instead of just going like boot camp, be like, hey, you gotta do this. It's like, bring it down a notch and talk. And that's the thing. Like I've had people talk to me say, if I wasn't a dog trainer, people see me teaching kids as a teacher, which I definitely would. It depend on the grade that I would. It would depend on what grade they put me in. If I go like younger, I might be like, okay, cool, kids, like I got you. We're gonna be nice. If it's high school, I'm gonna be like, sit your ass down.
Yeah.
Be like,
Like,
hey, is
talk
that a
to them
phone?
like an adult. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, is that a
I mean, I
phone?
probably wouldn't say it like that. Everybody's got their own style, but I love working with the 12, 13, 14, 15, 16-year-olds because they're so easy compared to 4, 5, and 6 and 7-year-olds, but they're fun in a different way. So yeah, it's great, and you do have to talk to them with respect. You want them to respect you. If you're just a little bit too bossy too, they may shut down. They're probably fed up with people being that way to them. So a fresh approach is also learning, what's their goal? What do they really wish would happen with the dog?
Yep.
They want to be a best buddy with the dog. They want to be able to, train the dog tricks. And I forgot to add, at a point, we were talking about bonding with the dog and doing things with the kids. Sometimes some simple commands and simple tricks you can do, but again, you kind of, as the adult, should probably introduce it, because it can get very frustrating. The dog doesn't know what you're trying to say, and then they fail, and then the kid gets frustrated and stuff like that. But anyway, that's sort of going back to what we were talking about earlier. So
yeah, I mean, there's just some, and then there's just like I was just thinking of this too. It's like I realize it's like I realize because I had like clients who have dogs who were difficult around kids and things like that, but then they had tell me I'm pregnant, and were all like, oh my god. They're like, oh no. But it's so funny, the dynamic where like when you've raised the kid's dropping food, and the dog's like looking at this kid like, oh my god, I love this kid, he's dropping all the crumbs. And it's such an amazing dynamic where I had two clients with dogs who were reactive to kids, but then they had a baby and then they drop food, and the dogs are like, oh my god, I love this kid, this kid provides me everything. Versus the other way around. Yeah, versus the other way around, I realize I can pick the pattern where family who have kids already, and then they get the dog. That's where I kind of see more of the issue, more than like the dog's already there, and then they bring a baby home, and then and there's like it's such an interesting dynamic, just watching how like different families go.
Everyone is a little bit different, but you start to listen to, when you interview, and the first you just start to listen to how things are set up and what's going on, and what's the dog's personality, and what was the life like before, and what do you get, you just like you're already getting I love it when people say, oh my god, it's like you're in my house, because they already realize that you totally understand, and then they start to get hope. And people, when they come to you, they're looking for hope. They might have heard something before that made them feel very negative, and like things are not going to work out. And so, yeah, that's important. Exactly.
Yeah. So I think Yeah, so I think that's like I think just this whole talk is really nice, and then like I think this I've been meaning to have this kind of topic bring up because not a lot of people talk about it, but you and I always are gonna deal with, or like any dog trainer is gonna have some issue with kids, and
Yeah,
like this is at least people can listen to this and get an understanding, and even like who knows, maybe we get a couple of families contact you afterwards, being like, hey, I saw you in the interview, and we need your help with our kid and dog, so
sure, sure. Yeah,
I think
yeah, that'd be great.
I think that's really great. But
Yeah.
so right now for you, Lesley, like is there anything else that you wanted to mention for the to
Um,
educate or
I can't think of anything. I think we covered a lot. Um,
mhm.
Kind of a nice round, view of everything. Um, yeah, I can't think of anything. Of course, I will think of 10 things right when I
It's okay.
get off.
It's
Yeah,
it's all good. And then plus it's like everyone it's like it's gonna be recorded, and like it's gonna be available like after the live for people to watch like later on and things like that. And you can
sure.
even share it on your wall on your
I
Facebook
will
so
share it.
people can watch it as well.
Absolutely.
So
I will
but
share it.
yeah, I think it was fantastic. And people,
Thank you.
if people have questions and things like that, they could leave the comment or they could just message
Yep.
and things like that. I also,
Yep.
now that I have everything on podcasts and my Canine Freedom Dog Talk, you guys can listen to it there, or YouTube or things. But
Sure.
Lesley, so how, if people were interested in contacting you or the book, getting the book or things like that,
Yeah. Yep.
what are some, what's the best way to reach you, or like website wise?
Yeah. So my website is a great way to. You can send me a message through that. You can also uh, order the dog safety learning activity for your kids through that.
Hmm.
But I have a Facebook page, Lesley or kids n canines, and also I have an Instagram which is kids dot period n period canines,
Hmm.
and you can find me there. I'm pretty responsive very quickly. They'll have my phone numbers. People sometimes send me a text, something like that. And I have met with people on Zoom. I've done Google Meet if they're far away. Phone consultations sometimes if you're far away. And a lot of times there's a lot of psychological that's back there and me listening. So you can cover a lot in a phone call. It's not necessary always to be hands on to the dog.
Hmm.
Um, After you've done enough of these, you can really start putting things together. So yeah, if there's multiple ways, you could, worst case scenario, reach out to Kevin. Kevin knows how to get a hold of me.
Yep. So perfect. So
Yeah,
uh
yeah.
I think everyone, we're gonna end the live stream right now, but keep an eye out for the next post for the next interview, and I'll put it out there so you guys can RSVP, and then you guys can hit me and Lesley up if you have any questions. And yeah, I think we're gonna just sign out and hope
Okay.
and wish you all a great Sunday. And
Thank you.
Leslie, thank
And
you again
Kevin,
for.
hey, I really want to thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk. It's nice. And I'm glad to be able to share this information, and give people another avenue to just try to get some help if they need it. So that was very, very nice.
For sure. So, guys, we're gonna end the stream now, and then Leslie and I are gonna talk a few minutes after. But you guys have a great Sunday, and I'll see you all soon.
Good.
All right,
All right.
guys.
Bye.